So, Daryl, tell me about the dreams you're having trouble with. Daryl looked down into the steam, seeming unsure how to begin. It was a long time ago, you understand. The dreams? Dr. Winter asked, unsure what he meant. No, the thing that happened in the dreams. The dreams are more recent, but they're really affecting my work. I need to sleep so I can be effective at my job, and these dreams are keeping me from getting restful sleep. The steam wafted up from the tea and created condensation on Daryl's glasses, making him appear to be crying in slow drips. Let's start with what happened then. Tell me about it, and maybe we can help you forget it. If you can't remember the trigger, then the dream should stop. Daryl sighed deeply, clearly not wanting to relive it, but willing to try. Well, I guess it all started with this weird obsession I had with other people's houses. When I was a kid, I had kind of a weird obsession with people's houses. It sounds odd, I know, but I always wanted to go into someone's house while no one was there and just, look around. I didn't want to take anything. I wasn't a thief, but I just wanted to look at their stuff and see where they put things. See if they like to keep things a certain way. If they like to keep things the way that I did. And just observe things without, them being there. When people show you their room and their collection of something, or take you somewhere that's special to them, they always get nervous that you'll judge them, and to me, that ruins the experience. I want to observe these things in their purest form, without someone standing behind me to hurry me along before I start to judge them. I can remember wanting to go into people's houses from a very young age. We'd be driving somewhere or on a trip, and I would see an unfamiliar house and just wonder what it was like in there. Did they have a cupboard full of mugs like my mom did? Was there an ashtray in the living room with butts in it? What color was their furniture? Did they collect knickknacks? I would create these little houses in my mind, based solely on the exterior, and never get any closure on how right or wrong I was. I still feel that way. I still want to look, but I'm wiser now. When I wonder now, I remember what happened when I was 11, and I know better than to go snooping. When I was 11, I found a house with an open door. I didn't set out to find the house, you understand. I wasn't casing the neighborhood for a nice house to go sightseeing in. I was on my way home from the corner store with my mom's cigarettes. We lived in a small town, and Mom had bought a pack of Virginia Slims at the same corner store every day for as long as I could remember. The lady at the store, Miss Vicky, had known me since I was in Oshkosh Bagosh overalls. She knew I was more likely to set my hand on fire than smoke one of Mom's cigarettes. So when I put the Skittles and the Yoo-Hoo on the counter and asked her for a pack of Virginia Slim long menthols, please, she put them in a paper bag, along with the change from the 10 my mom had given me. "Tell your mom I said hi," she said, the bell over the door tinkling happily, and I said I would as I took my leave. The trip home was about 10 minutes by foot, and I had drunk the Yoo-Hoo in about 45 seconds into the walk. I tossed it into someone's garbage can, because I wasn't a litter bug, and had just torn open the bag of Skittles when my eyes found something I couldn't remember having seen before. I had walked this road 1,000 times, rode my bike up at half that many, and as I turned to look at the house, I don't think I'd ever seen it before in all that time. It was fluorescent blue, that weird bubble stucco on it that was trendy at the time. It had little square windows and a big metal awning over the top of each to keep the light in to a minimum. The grass was a little tall in the yard, but not unkempt. This was Georgia after all, and if it rained more than twice after you cut it, you had to cut it again. There was no car in the yard, and The whole place just looked very abandoned, and the door was wide open. I stopped with my Skittles in hand, thinking about that door and the idea of exploring a house with no one in it. I'd never been inside a house by myself that wasn't mine, and though I knew I shouldn't, I couldn't imagine another opportunity like this. This could be my only chance. My 11-year-old brain told me that. I might had better take advantage. Well, I could. It further said. I took a step off the road towards the door, then another, and another. Before I knew it, I was in the yard with the tall, tickly tops of the seed pods rubbing at my legs. I looked at the door like it might suddenly slam shut, but with every step that it stayed open, I felt a little more confident that I was making the right decision. I peeked inside and found an empty living room with the TV playing. The light coming in through the windows was enough to show me the dingy living room, but I could tell that it'd be dark in here after the sun went down. The TV was playing a commercial for dog food, and the lights on the screen made me hesitate to enter. Just a quick look at the living room, I told myself. If someone came back from the bathroom or something and found me here, I can say that the door was open and that I was worried. That's a thing a good neighbor would do after all, and so I started quickly looking around at the small square front room. A mustard yellow couch took up one whole wall, and it looked prickly. It was like the couch in my grandma's house, the one in her receiving room, and there was a scratchy throw tossed over the back of it that really brought the whole thing together. There was a divot in the couch, too, right in front of the TV, and it appeared that someone had spent a lot of time making it. On the wall closest to the kitchen was a flimsy bookshelf that held some magazines and paperbacks on the bottom and the middle shelf, and a bunch of those weird-looking figurines on the topmost shelf. I think they were called Precious Moments figures or something, and whoever lived here had about 15 of them, that I could see at least. They had set the ones with animals in them at the front, and I wondered if those were the ones they liked the best. They all looked chipped and second-hand, none of them appearing new, and the kids they depicted looked discolored with age or old cigarette smoke. Speaking of, there was a TV tray next to the couch, and on it was a teetering ashtray full of thick yellow butts. They weren't Virginia Slims, and the filters said Marlboro on them in little gray letters. Someone had made a little mountain out of them, and it looked like if you dropped one into the opening left in the center, it would smoke like a volcano. There were some pictures on the wall, a man fishing with a kid about my age, a man laughing with a group of people at a theme park, and two men working on an old car. They looked too yellow and kind of washed out, though. The frames were dusty, and the glass looked like it hadn't been cleaned in a very long time. As I took these things in, I couldn't help but feel that something was watching me. I kept looking around, preparing to see someone standing there, watching me intrude, but I never saw anyone. It was a feeling, like when you think there's a bug on your arm, or when someone pretends to crack a make-believe egg on your knee. It's just something you feel, but you don't know why you feel it. It's the same sense that kept your ancestors alive, but it's something we've forgotten in our perceived safety. As I finished looking at the living room, no one having come out to challenge me, I decided to go check out the kitchen too. Sometimes in TV shows, people found their neighbors hurt or something, and I wondered if someone had been injured inside and needed me to call an ambulance. That was a lie. I suspected no such thing, but I wanted to see more of the house before I was discovered. I expected any minute to hear a toilet flush or hear a door close and hear the telltale sound of footsteps coming from the back of the house. They would find me in their house and ask what I thought I was doing, or I would run out before they saw me, and that would be the end of my little adventure. But I wanted to see how far I could get before that happened. The kitchen looked a little like the one at my house. The floor was covered in black and white checkered linoleum, but where ours was shiny and often waxed, this one was peeling and faded. The countertops were chipped and dull, the lustrous black formica looking greasy and sticky. There were cans on it, open cans that crawled with little white worms, and there were more in the trash. The label declared it chili, and it looked less like the kind you ate alone and more like the kind you put on hot dogs. There was a light there, a single round globe speckled with fly corpses, but it did little to reach the corners. The corners looked very dark, almost unnaturally dark, and as I walked around to inspect the little table and the mostly empty cupboards, I could feel that same crawling feeling of being watched. The pockets in here were deeper than the ones in the living room, and it was easier to believe that someone might be watching from them. It almost felt like I could see someone in the dark there, but I couldn't be sure as I looked to the next hallway and tried to decide if I dared. The hallway beyond was cast in various stages of shadowy darkness. The first few steps were shadowy, but I could see the still brown carpet that covered the floor. After that, about 5 feet down, however, it was shadowy to the point of being hard to tell what color the walls were. I could see a door midway down the hall, a bathroom I assumed, but beyond that was little more than the inclination of a door. The longer I looked, the more I could feel something staring at me from that darkness, and the less sure I was that I wanted to go in there. The same feeling I had gotten in the kitchen and the living room was back in force, and the longer I stared, the more I felt like I could see something in that darkness. It was human-shaped, though probably not human. It seemed to hang in the murk of that hallway, the dark converging around it as my eyes tried to make sense of what I was seeing. It looked, for all the world, like a child's interpretation of darkness, the thick squiggles that often decorate a picture of a dark room. I had taken a single step into that hallway, my foot seeming to be gone as it passed from the semi-lighted kitchen to the hall, and I took it back as I backtracked for the living room. I had seen enough to know that satiating my curiosity might be the end of me. I left the door open and ran for my house, not feeling safe until my own door was between me and the unknown entity that resided there. I told my mother what had happened because I honestly didn't know what else to do. Mom was an adult and might very well be able to make sense of it. She would smile and pat my head and tell me how I had been silly and that I shouldn't let my imagination get the better of me. She would explain it in a way that my child's mind could understand, and it would all be okay. Instead, she called the police and asked if they'd do a well check on the house. Mom had been an emergency dispatcher for about 15 years before finally leaving to be a stay-at-home mom, so she knew what to say to get them to go have a look. They said they would, and when Officer Buck came by a few hours later, I just figured he was in the neighborhood and wanted to say hi. He and Mom had been friends since high school, and he and Dad bowled together and were part of the Moose Lodge, so it wasn't uncommon for him to be at the house. I expected he would ask me to go play somewhere so he and Mom could talk about boring stuff, but he asked me to stay today so he could ask me some questions. He wanted to know what I had seen in the house, and how far I had been, and whether I had smelled anything or seen anything that scared me. I told him about the crawly feeling and how it had felt like someone was watching me, and he thanked me for my honesty and said that I had been very brave to try and check on something like that, but in the future, if I suspected somebody might be in danger, I should call the police station and tell someone. Mom walked him to the door not long after that, and they whispered about something while I went and watched cartoons in the living room. I had already basically forgotten the fear and uncertainty I'd felt in that house. I was a kid, and nothing ever lasted for very long in my mind. I had already moved on to more important things, like Mum-Ra's latest scheme on Thundercats, or how Cobra was going to destroy the G.I. Joes. Mom came and sat with me on the couch then, hugging me a little as she stroked my hair, but I didn't think anything of that either. They bulldozed that house a few weeks later. I watched them destroy it from the seat of my bike. My friends called out to me, wanting me to come and ride with them, but I was trapped by the sight of that strange house as it was flattened. It was weird to realize that you might be the last person to truly see and experience a place, though I would learn I was far from the last many years later. I'd been having some weird dreams lately, and that was the only reason I remembered it at all. I walked through a house I didn't know, my vision seeming to be on rails as I moved effortlessly through the dingy space. I saw a living room with a TV showing snow, a kitchen with counters covered in dark brown juice, and then stopped at a pitch-black hallway. There was something in there. I could feel it, and as it zoomed in, I could hear a high-pitched ringing beginning to build until I finally woke up. I asked Mom about it, figuring she might remember, and she got this look on her face that made me instantly regret asking. I was hoping you'd forgotten about that. Your Uncle Buck was afraid it might traumatize you, but I told him it seemed like you really hadn't seen anything. I didn't. Not really, I said, not sure what to say. But I definitely felt something in that house, something that scared me. What was in there? Why did they tear it down all of a sudden? The man who lived there was a shut-in. He paid someone to go get his groceries and to cash his Social Security checks, and basically never left the house. Buck said when we called for a well check, they went in and found him dead in the back room. He said the flies were so thick that the EMTs were having trouble getting him out. They were in the corner of every room, and they were a real nuisance. They had to demolish the house because the room had a lingering smell, and the flies just never quite stopped gathering there. I was glad she'd told me, but I wasn't entirely sure what to do with that information. As the dreams get more persistent, I'm not sure how best to get past them, and every night it's always the same. As he finished, Daryl opened his mouth and let the spongy mass slip into his coffee cup. He sat placidly for a few minutes, blinking his eyes very quickly, and Winter took the opportunity to whisk the cup away before he came to. She added the contents of the cup to a mason jar, washing the cup and setting it by the sink before seating herself and staring at Daryl expectantly. He would assume that he was coming out of a trance, just as she wanted, and he wouldn't question much, besides whether or not it had worked. Humans were far too eager to forget the things that brought them pain in one form or another, something that Dr. Winter used to pay her bills and live very comfortably. Daryl shook his head 30 seconds later and looked around. "What happened?" he asked groggily. "We succeeded in freeing you from your burden. Don't think about it too much. It might hurt you more in the long run if you do." She was showing him the way out when her phone rang. Winter looked down and saw it was Juliet, her receptionist, and picked it up on the third ring. She was probably letting her know that the next client was here. Business had been busy lately, and Winter had never been happier for clients to help. Rent was going up next month on the office. The summer months were always more expensive on the electric bill, and fancy dinners did not, as a rule, pay for themselves, no matter how cute your girlfriend was. "Dr. Winter, someone's here to see you. Someone who isn't on the list." Pamela furrowed her brow. Tell them that without an appointment I can't help them to..." But the door opened as a man in a dated suit walked into her office. Juliet was right behind him, telling him that he had to fill out forms and insurance papers. But Winter gritted her teeth as she told the fiery receptionist that it'd be okay. "Tell my next client I'll reschedule them for first thing tomorrow, and it'll be free." "Free?" Juliet asked, looking shocked. "Free," Winter repeated. "Apologize profusely, but tell them I have an emergency that's come in, and I must take it." Juliet nodded, closing the door behind herself as the man in the pinstripe suit took a seat on her client's couch. "Such generosity," he commented, grinning hugely at her as he rested his leg on his knee. "No such luck. You'll pay me for the lost time and trade, as is fair." When he smiled again, the gold of his glasses seemed to glimmer. "How little you have changed over the years, sister." Dr. Pamela Winter shook her head, unimpressed with the so-called untouchable figure that was the warden of Stragview Prison. "I have changed much, brother. It is you who have changed little. Get to the point, please. Like you, I have other matters to attend to." "You're still here. I thought you might be. Thanks for joining me for tonight's story. If your insatiable appetite for horror knows no bounds, might I suggest one of our playlists, or one of our previous stories in the archive? There should be one appearing at the end of the story any minute now. And of course, if you're not subscribed, why not go ahead and hit that subscribe button? Maybe hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the spooky things that we do here. If you prefer your horror a little more analog, you can always pick up one of my books. There's a link below to my latest, and it'll take you to all the great things that I've posted on Amazon. For my book lovers in the audience, I always suggest coming on down to Patreon so you can become part of my ghostly reader tier and get a book anytime I write one, which is usually about twice a year. Speaking of my patrons, let's go ahead and thank them, shall we? Thanks to Unicorn Hollow for being our spooky ghost contributor. Thanks to Janet and Lady Vengeance for being our spooky skeleton tier contributors. Thanks to Hi Stacy, Winter, Xaronan, Emily Coltsfoot, Stephanie Carrington, Marianne Schuler, Tyler Parker, and Jennifer Damron for being our ghostly reader tier contributors. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you. If you think you might like to support the show in a more monetary fashion, come on down to Patreon. I have many tiers. I'm sure you'll find one that suits you best. I always recommend the Ghostly Reader tier, since you get a signed book anytime I write one on your doorstep. But I have many tiers, and again, I'm sure you'll find one to suit you. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.